We never really meet the Queen of Lothric, so we can only imagine what she looked like. We do know that the Queen of Lothric was married to King Oceiros. Although we only see Oceiros in his dragon form, in his game files he is referred to as Dragon Angel. Perhaps this statue shows what he looked like in the past. We also know that there were parallels between the Queen of Lothric and Gwynevere. Gwynevere being the Princess of Sunlight and daughter of Lord Gwyn. First, Hidden Blessing and Divine Blessing are two types of holy water blessed by the Queen of Lothric. Both of them bear a striking resemblance to the holy water from the goddess Gwynevere called Divine Blessing. Second, the Queen of Lothric's Divine Blessing can be found on a silver knight, in a room with a painting of Gwynevere, and chests containing the Leo ring and Smu's great hammer. Leo and Smu were the two knights who protected Gwynevere's chambers. Third, the Queen of Lothric was initially revered as the goddess of fertility and bounty. Gwynevere, the goddess of sunlight, was cherished by all as the symbol of bounty and fertility. This shows that at some point people compared the Queen of Lothric with Gwynevere. The big question is, why is the Queen of Lothric so deeply associated with Gwynevere? I think it's because the Queen of Lothric marketed herself as such. I can picture the Queen throwing charity events and auctioning off Praise the Sun t-shirts to raise souls for the enkindled knights. Why would she do that? Because I don't think she was born into royalty. I think she married into it. To compensate for her lack of royal blood, she tried to link herself with a cherished, beautiful goddess in people's minds. Basically, she was trying to earn royal cred. This could mean that overall, the Queen of Lothric was an ambitious woman who caught the eye of King Oceiros, who was probably quite ambitious himself. I'm guessing they became a power couple, the most iconic duo since pizza and pineapple. But being compared to Gwynevere wasn't enough. The Queen of Lothric wanted to make her own name. Not only that, she wanted to build a legacy that would surpass the old gods. She would do so through her children. If you look at the bust that I think represents Oceiros straight on, it looks like the torch is obscuring his face, almost replacing the entire head, which could signify that Oceiros had the first flame on his mind, to the point where it was obscuring his vision, which could also mean that Oceiros was totally on board with the idea and started looking into ways of producing super kids. Funny thing is, their super kids were modeled after the heirs of Gwyn. Gwyn's firstborn was a god of war who inherited the sunlight, but his foolishness led to a loss of his deific status. The Lothric wanted their own god of war, a better, smarter and stronger one who would not get stripped of his rank. Gwyn's beloved youngest daughter Filianor was a matriarch of the church whose favors knew no boundaries. The Lothrics wanted their own, holier, more divine, and more impressive Filianor. Gwyn's last-born was Gwyndolin, a dark moon deity and the protector of the forsaken city of Anerlondo. The Lothric wanted their own last-born. Their last-born wouldn't just protect a forsaken city. Their last-born would be a great lord who would preserve the entire Age of Fire. The Lothrics succeeded in their baby-making endeavors and got their carbon copy kids. There was Lorian the older prince, Lothric the younger prince, Gertrude the heavenly daughter, and Ocelot, the child of dragons. On a side note, during the fight with Oceiros, we can hear Ocelot cry. But it's unclear whether those screams emanate from the baby, or if those screams are a projection of the king's madness. We know that a model of Ocelot is available in the game files, with the normal and bloody textures. Moreover, there are sound files which make it seem like the baby is crushed during the boss fight. This could suggest that Ocelot was meant to die during the fight with Oceiros. However, that content was not included in the final game, leaving the lore and fate of Ocelot up to interpretation. For the purpose of this lore, we're going to assume that Ocelot and Lothric were one and the same. Ocelot could have been Lothric's birth name, but since Ocelot was meant to be this great lord, he was dubbed Lothric to personify the entire bloodline. Speaking of the bloodline, here's what the Queen of Lothric and King Oceiros produced. Lorian was the equivalent of the god of war. Lorian, who was raised as a knight, single-handedly slayed the demon prince, so he must have been an amazing swordsman. Perhaps he would have bested the nameless king himself had they ever met. Gertrude was the equivalent of Filianor. I'm not sure at what point exactly, but Gertrude was visited by an angel who revealed a tale to her. Despite losing both her sight and her voice, she was determined to record the tale. Ordinary men cannot decipher her fragmentary scroll, nor comprehend how it became the foundation of the angelic faith of Lothric. Clearly, Gertrude showed the propensity for the holy and the divine, and thus surpassed Filianor, who showed a propensity for sleeping. The third kid would have been the greatest masterpiece. A mix of both Lorian and Gertrude, encompassing Lorian's knighthood and Gertrude's penchant for the holy and the divine. There was even a holy sword fashioned for the future heir, which makes some sense. The sword itself hinted at Lorian, while the name Holy and the sacred attack hinted at Gertrude. Their third child could have been expected to be the head of the Lothric sibling trinity, and to wield a sword that symbolized Gertrude and Lorian. Maybe the plan was for the older siblings to become the third child's right and left hands. Speaking of the sword, it was blessed with potent magic by the High Priestess Emma. Keep in mind, there were 3 pillars of the king's rule: the scholar, the High Priestess, and the Knight. Emma was a representative of one of the pillars, specifically the High Priestess. Her blessing the Holy Sword with magic could point to at least one of the 3 pillars, waiting for the third child in anticipation. This could in turn indicate that the birth of the third heir was a pretty big deal, and was publicized in the kingdom. In the unused content, Lothric has a scythe, which could mean that the young prince could have been expected to be a Grim Reaper of sorts. His duty could have consisted of decapitating heads and throwing them into the bonfire at the shrine to feed the first flame for an eternity. I think there were very high hopes for the third heir, but before I go on, have you heard of thalidomide? It was a drug used against nausea and to alleviate morning sickness in pregnant women. It became an over-the-counter drug in West Germany in 1957. While initially considered safe, the drug was responsible for deformities in children if their mothers used it prior to the 3rd trimester. I think something similar happened in the case of the Lothrics. Oceiros used magic to enhance his children's capability, producing Gertrude and Lorian. However, he used the same magic during a different time in the queen's pregnancy, causing Ocelot, the prince destined to be the Lord of Cinder, to be born into illness. There were attempts to cure Ocelot's illness through some unspeakable means, but those attempts failed. The best they could do was give young Lothric clothes made of cloth used in ancient prayer to keep him from perishing away. The Queen of Lothric may have felt guilty that her ambitions led to her child being born frail and shriveled. The guilt could have led her to isolate herself somewhere. Or maybe she felt mortified that she didn't produce an heir that would put the old gods to shame. So she decided to vanish from the public eye or from the entire land. A third possibility is she couldn't accept that Ocelot was born into illness. She was taken by a madness and became convinced that someone stole her real child. She was then sucked into the painted world of Ariandel trying to look for him. However it happened, after giving birth to Ocelot, her youngest, she quietly disappeared, leaving a high priestess, possibly Emma, to become young Lothric's wet nurse. From there, the Lothric family fell apart. Oceiros lost his mind. With his wife gone, the pressures involved in being royalty, producing suitable heirs, preserving the Age of Fire got to him, and led him to have a mental breakdown. Discovering the twisted worship of Seath the Pale Drake didn't help either. It probably made things worse, since everyone who indulged in research connected to Seath, the dragons, and the moonlight seemingly lost their minds. Now, put yourself in Ocelot's shoes. Ocelot saw how the obsession with producing a worthy heir broke his family apart. Had Oceiros not been obsessed with harnessing his royal blood for a greater purpose, he would not have sought out the heretics of the Grand Archives, and wouldn't have gone mad. Had the Lothric family not been obsessed with the First Flame, Ocelot's mother might still be okay. With all that misfortune, and without the guidance of his ambitious parents, Ocelot may have been led away from the idea of linking the flame by a private mentor more easily than if his parents were around. I'm not sure which straw broke the camel's back, but Ocelot wanted no part in the whole becoming a lord business. Lorian, raised as a knight, is said to have been left mute and crippled by his younger brother's curse. It was also said that Lorian in fact wished it so. In the cut content, we find Lorian's shield, which could mean that he continued to defend his younger brother even after being left mute and crippled by the curse. Either way, Lorian doesn't seem interested in much of anything other than protecting his sibling. So there goes the great Lothric god of war. As for Gertrude, she was imprisoned in the lofty cell of the Grand Archives for worshipping the divine messengers. So it looks like all the Lothric heirs failed to fulfill the greatness that was envisioned for their bloodline. The entire family met a tragic end. The queen disappeared and hasn't been heard from since. Gertrude perished in a cell, while Lorian, Lothric, and Oceiros were bested by the Ashen One. Some say that the Queen of Lothric is Gwynevere, but I don't think so. The Princess of Sunlight Gwynevere left Anerlanda long ago, and became wife to flame god Flann. Some say that the queen is Rosaria, but I don't think so either. Rosaria, the mother of rebirth, was robbed of her tongue by her firstborn, and has been waiting for their return ever since. Some say that the Queen of Lothric is Nashandra, but that's impossible because recycled Dark Souls 2 content is irrelevant. There might be a statue or painting of the Queen of Lothric somewhere, but she has already quietly disappeared by the time the champion of Ash was awoken by the bell. Now, I do want to say I don't think that the Queen of Lothric was this one-dimensional Cruella de Vil-looking woman who wanted her name to be known at all costs regardless of the consequences. She was ambitious, but there was more to her. She actually cared about the well-being of others. Maybe she didn't grow up in the greatest of homes. Maybe her home was destroyed by conflict. Maybe she was naturally kind. Either way, there is evidence which points to the queen wanting to make this world a better place. She did little things that weren't glorified, that she didn't ask recognition for, and that could have easily gone unnoticed. Like enshrining a ring in the cemetery of untended graves, so that one day an unkindled might profit from its use. Or leaving a hidden blessing on a grave in Lothric that sees no visitors, to wish the poor souls good fortune. Well, that's about it. In part 2, we're going to examine the idea that Ocelot and young Lothric are two different people, and that the Queen of Lothric is actually Gwynevere's relative. Before I sign off, I wanted to give a shout out to SanaDSK for all the awesome work he puts into finding hidden lore. And a super big thank you to JSF for helping me make sense of all this lore, and to Herbert West for adding to the notes. You should totally check out their YouTube channels, which I will put below. Also a high five to Marty, Santos, Haji, Aline, Azald, Bob, more so Mittens, and everyone on the server for your help and encouragement. Well, that's about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you another time.